Hi, my name is Carrie Karsgaard, and I'm sitting right now in a place that Settler maps call Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. But this is unceded Syilx territory. And if we really acknowledge this, the land becomes a different place than the mainstream says it is, and we need to rethink our relations to one another and to the land. Today, I want to rethink colonial relations a bit by sharing some research about place-based public pedagogy on Instagram, specifically around the Trans Mountain Pipeline controversy, mapping the issue in a way that helps us unmap our thinking a bit. As a bit of a backgrounder before we dig in 2018, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau approved and purchased a pipeline expansion that would nearly triple the existing transport of bitumen from Alberta's oil sands to the coast of BC from 300,000 barrels a day to nearly 900,000. The extension of the Trans Mountain through various remote and urban communities means this issue is deeply connected to land and location. National, political, and civic politics intersect on particular lands and waters, from worker camps to popular beaches, from blueberry harvesting grounds to ocean straits filled with orcas and mollusks. The Trans Mountain controversy has seen protests and demonstrations at federal and provincial governments and law courts, in parks and city streets, rural camps, urban bridges, ports, and waterways. Blockades and resistance camps have been set up along the pipeline route at Camp Cloud in Burnaby Mountain and at Blue River by the Tiny House Warriors. In all of these places, resistance is Instagrammed. The pipeline conflict gets at the heart of Canada's nature as a settler colonial state. Tuck, Mackenzie, and McCoy define settler colonialism as a form of colonization in which outsiders come to a land inhabited by Indigenous peoples and claim it as their own new home. This, of course, involves a disavowal of violent histories, Indigenous peoples' resistance to settlement and claims to stolen land, and also how settler colonialism is indeed ongoing and not an event contained in the past. Under settler colonialism, mainstream environmentalism represents the land as an iconic wilderness and resource base in Canada's nation-building narrative, which further displaces Indigenous claims to land. Despite ideological and material violences that are ongoing, resistant publics continue to test state structures, resulting in settler colonialism as an incomplete and often contradictory project. And it's these contradictions that we're going to trace today in relation to the Trans Mountain Pipeline on Instagram. And so I'm looking at Instagram as public pedagogy, a cultural form that functions to teach the public. You can see here some of the ways that Instagram users address the pipeline issue. Today, I'm going to focus primarily on the location tag, which works in conjunction with the other components of a post like text and hashtags and images as part of the platform's public pedagogy. The location tag connects posts geographically, not only in labeling individual posts, but also returning posts in place-based searches. The implications of geolocating posts are complex, as social media data function dialectically with places, connecting, reflecting, and representing, but also constructing them. My research traces public pedagogy through the large-scale analysis enabled by critical digital methods and visual methodologies. And I'm combining these quantitative methods with close reading practices to examine the nuances of the precise pedagogies being used. And so digital methods use web-based data like hashtags and timestamps, location tags to map social issues as they're performed online. Digital methods are really helpful in mapping issues that are live and distributed, crossing sectors and moving across cultural and geographical borders, and also that involve human and non-human actors like governments, bots, NGOs, and corporations who all interact in the digital sphere. When working with social media, visual methodologies enable analysis of images within these webs of relations rather than analyzing them as standalone. And so I scraped Instagram using Instagram Scraper, a tool on GitHub, using a number of hashtags associated with the Trans Mountain Pipeline issue. My resultant data set contains over 13,000 posts from 2014 to May 2020, but today we're focusing on a subset of just under 5,000 posts that are networked by location tags. As an overview to the set, you can see here, the graph on the screen maps which hashtags in pink are used in conjunctions with which location tags in green. And nodes are proximal according to the frequency with which they're used together. So hashtags are clustered near locations with which they're most frequently used. And so the selected names you see on the screen range in scale and specificity, indicating potential for purposeful yet limited selection and thus significance for public pedagogy. The majority of posts are affiliated with the names of cities, towns, and First Nations reserves. These toponyms link to immediate communities and local politics, while still remaining general enough for users to undermine surveillance efforts, in case they're being surveilled by the state for their resistance. However, many users select the names of broader and more abstract, politically defined locations such as provinces and countries, potentially taking up, appropriating, or speaking back to these higher levels of governance. And I'm going to compare a few of these locations in just a moment. First, I want to just orient us in the graph, which I could spend a lot of time on, but won't right now, and point out that Burnaby Mountain is central to pipeline resistance, connecting the issue to a heterogeneous range of topics, as seen in the central region of the graph. Burnaby Mountain is where the Tsleil-Waututh Watch House is located, and it's been the site of multiple resistance camps and rallies over the years. I also want to draw attention to Blue River, located in the bottom left, where a pipeline-resistant Indigenous group called the Tiny House Warriors have built small houses along the pipeline route in the interior of BC. And so we're going to look closely at these as well as a couple of other locations. And so to start with Burnaby Mountain, what you see here are the top 15 hashtags associated with this location, and a stack of the top 10 most liked images, layered hierarchically according to their number of likes. So this gets at sort of the dominant messages associated with the location. Image stacks like this are one expression of visual methodology, where the image stack isn't used as a visual display of findings, but is instead used as a tool for analysis. And so to complement these quantitative analyses, I've also read all of the posts associated with this location, nearly 400 in this case, to understand how users story this place. And so Burnaby Mountain, unsurprisingly, features a great diversity of posts centered on protests. Posts in this set are largely personalized, and people share their experiences and emotions during protests. They express solidarity with the efforts of other groups. They signal boost the work of various Indigenous leaders and water protectors, and they give various calls to action. In this context, the prominent hashtag Water is Life, which you see on the left, a Nakota phrase that rose to popularity during the No Dakota Access Pipeline resistance, it's difficult to interpret. On the one hand, it may point to Indigenous leadership and resistance, so Indigenous sovereignty over lands along the pipeline route, and an Indigenous worldview that understands land and human life as connected. On the other hand, the uptake of the phrase within a cosmopolitan and urban area like Burnaby and Vancouver may indicate appropriation and commodification of Indigenous resistance within the platform, as some researchers have argued is the case with this phrase. Further complexities arise in relation to the imagery of arrests. A site of many arrests, Burnaby Mountain posts capture repeated imagery of RCMP, Canada's national police, and critique the state for arresting peaceful protesters. And you can see here this image of strength and resistance to arrest. These posts laud civil disobedience as a component of democracy. And this kind of framing conflicts with the next location set, which focuses on the racist and white supremacist nature of the RCMP or police, as it contributes to the oppression and genocide of Indigenous peoples. And so taking a look at Blue River, it's a very different place from Burnaby Mountain, which is located on Tsleil-Waututh Indigenous lands in the Greater Vancouver area and draws on a large population. Blue River is in the rural interior of BC on Indigenous lands through which the pipeline crosses. Blue River posts are dominated by a sense of being on the front lines, both of pipeline construction and of resistance to the settler state, as tiny house warriors have in fact blockaded pipeline construction at Blue River. Posts here document attacks on frontline defenders, the violence brought on Indigenous women by the man camps set up for pipeline construction workers, and violent assaults on land defenders by the police. Anger and determination to halt pipeline construction are evident in hashtags that are much more strongly worded and more directly anti-colonial than the Burnaby Mountain set, which you can see here on the left side of the screen. At the same time, posts also express a strong sense of home and Indigenous resurgence, sharing love of the land and community, posting imagery of tattoos, artwork, and cultural expressions, and particularly signaling the strength of Indigenous women in protecting the land, as you can see here through the multiple images of women smiling on the land and displaying their tattoos. These images oppose colonial representations of Indigenous peoples as warriors, hostile resistors, or backwards, instead depicting Indigenous resurgence and connection to the land. And so the comparison between Burnaby Mountain and Blue River indicates the located nature of on-the-ground resistance, including different positions in relation to the colonial state, along with how this takes shape on Instagram. I became curious as to why someone might take British Columbia, the province, instead of a specific location like Burnaby Mountain or Blue River, which are located within the province. And so we can see here that posts associated with BC take on a really particular flavor. Imagery is wilderness imagery, absent of human life, as you see here, of animals and sea life. And hashtags similarly relate to beautiful BC, wild, and PNW for Pacific Northwest. These evoke the social imaginary of BC as a pristine wilderness, along with pride in BC's natural landscapes. A close reading of the texts of BC posts similarly evoke the beauty of nature in BC and a love for the province. From a settler colonial framework, many posts reflect a mainstream environmentalist frame that remove people, including Indigenous people, from the land. Instead of a place interconnected with human life, the land is represented as wild, an escape from human developments, extraction, and urban life, to be protected and conserved as such according to the colonial borders of the province of BC. And so by evoking the social imaginary of BC, posts reinforce settler colonialism even as they join in opposition to the pipeline. The location tag for Canada similarly piqued my interest. To what effect are posts tagged with the political abstraction of Canada? Every post that tags Canada for its location is anti-pipeline. These are largely centered on Indigenous resistance and sovereignty, while some also focus on the environment and climate issues, all of which fall under federal jurisdiction. Notably, posts associated with Canada are dominated by anger, with multiple references to KKK Canada, police violence, corporate influence over national decision-making, and links between the Trans Mountain Pipeline and other Indigenous issues. By exploring the posts associated with Canada, we can see the links between capitalism, climate and environmental justice, and Indigenous sovereignty in Canada, particularly in relation to national policy. And so location tag selection enables both place-based and place-connected public pedagogy on Instagram. And so in the first case, where post imagery and text inform and are informed by location tags referencing specific and local places, a place-based public pedagogy draws on daily experiences and local landscapes. So for instance, location tags on Instagram situate resistance by locating posts live and on location during protests, demonstrations, and blockades at Burnaby Mountain and Blue River, interacting uniquely with local cultures and politics in both resistant and conforming ways. Not all located public pedagogy is place-based, however, with abstract political entities of province and nation exhibiting an expression of place-connected public pedagogy. In this case, location tags don't primarily evoke specific places, bodies, and events, but hold representative significance and connective force. Here, public pedagogy applies the location tag to leverage social imaginaries associated with particular locations like BC, and also at times to spur political action or to concretely speak back to political authorities such as the state of Canada. And so while hegemonic settler colonialism circulates within pipeline public pedagogy, it does so unevenly across geographic locations and in relation to located governments and colonial powers. In contrast with binary conceptions of public pedagogy as either oppressive or emancipatory, place-based and place-connected public pedagogies are located yet connected, political and bound up with power at various geographical scales, with multiple public pedagogues located in multiple places, contesting and reinforcing settler colonialism in multiple ways. Thank you. I look forward to chatting with you at CIES.